How do you fall back in love after years of built up frustrations, disappointments, maybe even betrayal? I'm going to tell you about one habit that my husband and I and other couples I've worked with have found very meaningful for this exact purpose. If you're new to my channel, I'm Jennell Elias, and I help high performing couples or couples who want to be to avoid feeling like distant roommates, restore intimacy, and build real, lasting growth. Sometimes after you've been in a relationship long enough, you start developing dings and hurts and bumps between the two of you. Sometimes unintentionally, just life being life. Other times, little accidental or not so little hurts that just start accumulating. Next thing you know, you just start feeling distant from that person. After some time, our view of our spouse or our significant other starts to change. When we look at them, we no longer see the amazing person that maybe they were when we were first dating, when we first fell in love. Now we start to see a lot more of the negativity. We definitely might not mean to, it might not be intentional. It's just kind of builds up, and sometimes we don't even notice we're doing it. Here are some signs that this might apply to the relationship. Signs that this might be where you're at right now could be feeling really easily irritated by them. Like it doesn't take much for them to set you off, or losing patience more quickly. Maybe you were having a perfectly fine day, suddenly they come on the scene and even their breathing is frustrating, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like they can't seem to do right by us. Or we give them a simple task and we can't even trust them with that much. Maybe some couples, as I work with them, they've stopped reaching out and asking for help. They stopped even trying to give that person a chance to mess up or to continue to disappoint them because they got tired of it and they don't even bother anymore. Another sign might be if we're using a rougher tone with them more often than not. If we're directing conversation and suddenly it's like, oh my God, what? Sure, whatever. And the tone, the words, maybe I'm not saying anything mean, but it's really not coming across as kind as it used to be. These are all possible signs that maybe there's been a little bit of that resentment and that frustration that's just built up for too long. So here's an exercise that I've used in my relationship that I prescribe to some of my couples that really help turn things around. Now, it doesn't fail that when I'm speaking to certain couples about this, almost the immediate reaction for some of them can be, "Oh my gosh, that's my spouse. Have you been secretly spying in our home?" Like, that's how my spouse talks to me all the time. They're the ones who have this problem. They do this. They should be the ones listening to this message right now or watching this video. Um, I'm not the one with the problem. For those couples, I usually try to encourage them to still give it a try, even if maybe the spouse is the one, that other person is the one doing this more. It doesn't hurt for us to start. Sometimes it takes a little bit of leadership in the relationship and spearheading, really being the change that we want to see in our relationships. And if you're both watching this video together and you're both willing to do this challenge, this practice together and comparing notes of how it feels, that's even better. But understand you guys are ahead of the game. It's typically not the norm. And it's okay to start there. Now, in a previous video, I started by mentioning kind of how to just start over. How do you start fresh when there is this kind of built up resentment? If you haven't had a chance to watch that video, I do encourage you to go back and check it out. This is kind of step two, but it's still just as effective to start here if you're able to. Sometimes when people are attempting that first step, they'll often realize this is easier said than done. I actually am having a hard time saying kind things, being positive towards my spouse because there's just so much negativity about them, period. Like I just don't feel very positive towards them. So how in the world am I going to be speaking to them positively? It can be tricky. And so sometimes this is what's going on instead, that there's just so much built up resentment and frustration that it's difficult to be positive towards them when we're really just not feeling it. That's where this exercise comes to play. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and for the next few weeks, hopefully, but let's just start with this week. Every day, let's actively pick out one thing about our spouse that they have or the behavior that they are like, something about them that we either admire or appreciate. We're going for admiration or appreciation. And I'll give you an example and why they're different. So I can appreciate if my husband took out the trash last night, but I don't necessarily admire that he's a trash taker outer. But that counts. That's an appreciation. We want to have one of those. I can also admire that he is great with the kids and he's such a good dad. And I am so blessed and lucky to be married to someone that is so invested in their kids' lives. He's going to make sure that our daughter never has to grow up with daddy issues because he's going to be so present in her life as he is so far. Something like that, I admire that in him. I think that's great about him. Yes, I also appreciate it, but it's a quality about him that I view positively. It's not necessarily just something that he did for me that I'm grateful for. And there's room on this exercise for both. You can both appreciate something that they've recently done or that they do in general, or you can admire something about them and their quality and their traits. It can be physical. You can admire what they look like. I mean, it's whatever, just something positive to stop and appreciate or put a spotlight in our own minds, right? So this is a mental exercise. We are every day going to try to pick out at least one thing that we either admire or appreciate, and we want to aim for a balance of both if we can. And then you want to write it down. Now, there's tons of science behind the power of writing things down. There's just something about, I mean, athletes can tell you, doing muscle memory and utilizing physically our bodies to help internalize a message. When you're journaling, you can technically write it down like a notepad on your phone, but somehow write the message down. And this can be just for us, just a mental exercise for myself to help me actively practicing looking for the positive qualities about my spouse, or you can utilize it as an opportunity to speak a little bit of love into your spouse by maybe occasionally reading off that list to them and just pausing and be like, hey, I wanted to let you know the other day when you did XYZ, I really appreciate that. Or, I was thinking this morning just how much I love that you are like this kind of quality, that you have that about you, that you are that way. I absolutely love that about you, and I'm so glad that I get to something like that, right? We could use that exercise to then feed that little bit of love into our spouse. We don't have to. We could just keep it to ourselves and just work on our own mindset towards our spouse. But whether you share it or you don't, I mean, I think it's nice to share it, but you don't have to. Whether we share it or we don't, the practice here, the exercise is just to actively force ourselves to interrupt the daily process, the constant frustrations and the things, and make ourselves enter a new mindset where we're stopping and looking at our spouse in a different light. There's plenty of research behind how our mindset and how we look at things completely has the capacity to completely change the trajectory of our lives, our behaviors, our life satisfaction. It can even actually improve your how long you live and whether or not you're more resilient to mental health conditions like depression and other things like that. Like mindset and how we choose to look at something, to think about it actively has a huge impact over our lives. It can work in our relationships too. Other couples who have used this, my own relationship as we've used this, they come back and they report that after a few weeks, they're already starting to gain back some of those loving feelings. And this isn't the end. This is just step two, frankly, for if you were watching the first video. But if this is your first one, then maybe this is step one. But it's a really impactful start. So give it a try. Let me know how it goes. Next week, I want to talk to you about starting to bring back the fun in the relationship. Sometimes couples I've worked with, when they get to this point, life just wears on you. We really stopped having fun together. And I want to help give you a few pointers on how we can do that and start bringing some of that back. Also, every second Tuesday of the month, bare minimum, I'm going live, but I try to go a little bit more often than just that. I just know bare minimum, definitely second Tuesday of every month. When possible, a little bit more often than that. So hit subscribe if you want to get the notification for when that next video comes out or when I'm going live up next. So I can maybe hopefully answer some of your questions or we can start the dialogue. You can let me know how all of this is going for you so far. But give all that a try, and I'll see you next time.